The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, certified mail, requiring my signature. I knew what it was before I opened it. I'd been waiting for this letter for 21 years, 3 months, and 17 days. Inside was a simple document from the law firm of Mitchell Barnes & Associates. Per the terms of the trust established by Catherine Brennan Webb, deceased, the beneficiary Jake Brennan Webb has now reached the age of 21. Please contact our office to schedule the reading of the trust documents and distribution of assets. My son Jake had no idea this letter was coming. He had no idea there was a trust. He had no idea his grandmother had left him close to $3 million. Because his mother, my ex-wife Claire, had hidden it from him for his entire adult life. But that was about to change. My name is David Webb. I'm 58 years old, and I've been keeping a secret from my son for 2 decades. Not because I wanted to, but because I legally had no choice. The trust documents my mother established before she died were ironclad. The money couldn't be revealed to Jake until he turned 21, and only the trustee, which was me, could make that revelation. Claire thought she could control that narrative. She thought she could tell Jake her version of the story when the time came. She was wrong. Let me go back to the beginning, to before the divorce, before the lies, when we were still a family. I met Claire in 1998 at a hospital fundraiser in Portland, Oregon. I was 33, a civil engineer working for the city. She was 28, a pharmaceutical sales rep with ambition that could light up a room. We got married fast, too fast, my mother warned me, and had Jake 2 years later. Those first few years were good. Claire was a devoted mother, or at least she seemed to be. We lived in a modest house in Beaverton, nothing fancy but comfortable. I worked long hours on infrastructure projects. Claire worked her territory, climbing the corporate ladder. Jake was happy, healthy, normal. My mother, Catherine, lived in Seattle, about 3 hours north. She'd visit every few months, always bringing gifts for Jake, always doting on her only grandchild. She and Claire got along well enough, though my mother occasionally expressed concern. "She's very focused on money, David," Mom said once when we were alone. "Claire, I mean. Every conversation somehow comes back to money. Who's making what? Who's bought what? What things cost?" "She grew up poor," I said, defensive. "She's worked hard to build security." "I understand that, but there's a difference between wanting security and being obsessed with it." I dismissed her concerns. Claire was my wife, the mother of my child. Of course she cared about financial stability. That was responsible, not obsessive. Then in 2003, my mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The doctors gave her 6 months. She lasted 5. During those 5 months, Mom got her affairs in order with the thoroughness of a woman who'd spent 40 years as an attorney. She called me up to Seattle in July, 2 months before she died. "David, we need to talk about my estate," she said. We were sitting in her living room, the same room where I'd spent countless childhood hours. She looked frail, the cancer eating her from the inside, but her mind was sharp as ever. "Mom, we don't need to talk about this now." "Yes, we do, because I've made some decisions, and I need you to understand why." She handed me a folder. Inside were trust documents, thick with legalese. "I'm leaving the house and most of my liquid assets to you," she said. "That's about $400,000 after estate taxes. But the bulk of my estate, my investment portfolio, the cabin in the San Juans, the life insurance policy, that's going into a trust for Jake." I looked at the numbers. The trust was valued at $2.7 million. "Mom, that's incredibly generous, but—" "There are conditions," she interrupted. "Jake can't access the money until he's 21, and he can't be told about it until he turns 21. I stared at her. "Why not?" Mom was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "Because I don't trust Claire." "What?" I've watched her, David. The way she talks about money, the way she looks at things. If she knows Jake has access to nearly $3 million, she'll find a way to control it. She'll manipulate him, use it for herself, make sure she benefits. And I won't let my grandson's inheritance be squandered by your wife's greed. Mom, that's not fair. Isn't it? She looked at me with those sharp attorney eyes. Tell me honestly, David, if Claire knew right now that Jake would inherit this money at 18, what would she do? I wanted to argue, to defend my wife, but the words stuck in my throat, because I could picture exactly what Claire would do. She'd start planning, talking about what they would do with the money, how they could invest it, what they could buy. And somehow, those plans would always benefit Claire. The trust has very specific terms, Mom continued. You're the trustee. You'll manage the investments until Jake turns 21. At that point, you'll contact him, explain the trust, and help him understand his inheritance. Claire can't touch it, can't influence it, can't even know about it until Jake is old enough to make his own decisions. What if he needs the money before 21? College, medical expenses. The trust allows for education and medical expenses at your discretion. You can pay for his college directly from the trust without telling him where the money's coming from. But the principal remains locked until 21, and the information about the trust remains sealed until then. I looked at the documents again. You really don't trust her. I love you, David, and I love Jake. But no, I don't trust Claire, and my dying wish is that you protect your son's inheritance from his mother. Can you do that for me? I promised I would. Mom died that September. Her funeral was small, dignified, just what she would have wanted. Claire seemed appropriately sad, appropriately supportive. She held my hand during the service, consoled Jake when he cried for his grandmother. 2 weeks later, during the reading of the will, Claire's mask slipped. The attorney read through the bequests. The house and cash assets to me, some smaller amounts to charities Mom had supported. And then, the remainder of Catherine Brennan Webb's estate, valued at approximately $2.7 million, is to be held in trust for her grandson, Jake Brennan Webb, with terms as specified in the attached trust documents. Claire went very still beside me. I could feel the tension radiating off her. After the reading in the parking lot, she turned to me. Nearly $3 million for Jake? Yes. Mom wanted to make sure he was taken care of. And you're the trustee? Yes. So you control it? I manage it according to the trust terms. Can he access it now, for education expenses? When he's older. The trust has specific guidelines. How much older? When he's 18. I hesitated. This was the moment. I could tell her the truth, that Jake wouldn't access the money or even know about it until he was 21. Or I could edit. When the time is right, I said carefully. The trust has age-based distributions. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Claire's eyes narrowed. I want to see those trust documents. The attorney has copies. You can request them. She did request them, but the documents she received were redacted. Mom's attorney had prepared 2 versions, one complete copy for me as trustee, and one heavily redacted copy for interested parties that showed the existence of the trust, but not the specific terms. Claire never saw the clauses about Jake not learning of the trust until 21. She never saw the restrictions preventing her from having any control or influence. She never saw my mother's letter explaining why those terms existed. But she knew there was money, and over the next few years that knowledge poisoned everything. The divorce came in 2006 when Jake was 6 years old. Claire filed, citing irreconcilable differences. The real reason was simpler. She'd met someone else. A doctor named Marcus Brennan. Successful, wealthy, everything she thought she deserved. The custody battle was brutal. Claire wanted full custody with minimal visitation for me. I fought for joint custody. The negotiations stretched for months. Then one day, Claire's attorney made an offer. My client is willing to agree to joint custody on one condition. She wants to be named co-trustee of Jake's trust. I was in my attorney's office when the proposal came through. Sarah Mitchell, my attorney, looked at me carefully. "David, can you legally do that?" "No," I said. "The trust documents specifically name me as sole trustee. My mother deliberately excluded Claire." "Then this is a non-starter." But Claire kept pushing. She had her attorney file motions, arguing that as Jake's mother, she had a right to help manage his inheritance, that excluding her was discriminatory, that she had Jake's best interests at heart. We went before a judge. I brought the complete, unredacted trust documents. The judge read them carefully, including my mother's letter of intent. Judge Patricia Reardon looked at Claire's attorney. "Counselor, the trust documents are explicit and legally sound. Catherine Webb had the right to name whomever she chose as trustee and to exclude whomever she chose. There's no legal basis for your client's claim. Your Honor, my client is the child's mother, which gives her parental rights, not trust rights. These are separate matters. The trust stands as written." Claire was furious. I watched her face in the courtroom as the judge ruled, saw the calculation, the anger, the sense of entitlement. After that, everything changed. Claire married Marcus within 6 months. They bought a large house in Lake Oswego, the wealthy part of Portland. Claire quit her job. Marcus made enough that she didn't need to work. She seemed to focus entirely on building her new life with her new husband. And she started poisoning Jake against me. It was subtle at first. Comments about how I couldn't afford the things Marcus could buy. Observations that I lived in a small house while they had a real home. Suggestions that I was struggling financially while Marcus was successful. Jake was young, impressionable. He started coming back from visits to Claire's house talking about Marcus's new car, their vacation to Hawaii, the pool they were installing. "Why don't we have a pool, Dad?" he asked once. He was 7. "Because we live in Oregon, buddy. It rains 9 months a year. When would we use a pool?" "Marcus says they'll heat theirs," Marcus says. Those 2 words became a constant refrain. When Jake was 10, Claire started a new campaign. She began telling Jake that I was keeping secrets from him, that there were things about his grandmother's will that I wasn't telling him. Jake came to me one Saturday afternoon. "Mom says Grandma Catherine left me money. Is that true?" My heart sank. "Yes, your grandmother provided for your future." "How much?" "That's complicated, buddy. Mom says you won't tell me because you're using it for yourself. She says you're supposed to be saving it for me, but you're spending it." I felt rage building, hot and dangerous. "Jake, that's not true. I'm not spending your money. I'm managing it carefully, investing it so it grows, making sure it's there for you when you need it." "When will I need it?" "When you're older." "How much older?" I couldn't tell him. The trust documents were explicit. Jake couldn't be informed of the full terms until he turned 21. If I told him now, I'd be violating the trust, potentially giving Claire grounds to challenge it. "When the time is right," I said. "I promise." But Jake wasn't satisfied, and Claire kept working on him. Over the next few years, she built a narrative. David is hiding something. David is controlling. David has money that should be helping Jake, but he's keeping it for himself. David doesn't have Jake's best interests at heart. Meanwhile, she and Marcus spent lavishly on Jake. Designer clothes, expensive electronics, a car when he turned 16, a BMW naturally, vacations to Europe and the Caribbean, everything Jake could want. Except the truth. I did my job as trustee. I managed the investments carefully, conservatively. The $2.7 million grew steadily over the years. By the time Jake turned 18, it was worth $4.2 million. By 21, it would be close to $5 million. I used trust funds to pay for Jake's college, University of Oregon, tuition and housing fully covered. Claire thought Marcus was paying for it. Jake thought I was paying for it out of my salary, which made him feel guilty because he knew I wasn't wealthy. "Dad, you don't have to pay for all this," he said when he started freshman year. "Marcus offered to help. He says you're probably struggling to afford it." "I can afford it," I said. "Your education is important to me." "But your house, your car. You don't spend money on yourself. You're always doing everything for me. I feel bad." "Don't. This is what fathers do." What I couldn't tell him, the money I was spending wasn't coming from my salary. It was coming from his trust, completely legally, exactly as my mother had intended. Education expenses were explicitly allowed. But Claire's narrative was set. David is struggling, but won't accept help. David is proud and stubborn. David is letting his son feel guilty about money instead of accepting Marcus's generous offers. Jake grew distant from me during his college years. He was polite, dutiful, called on birthdays and holidays. But the warmth was gone. Claire had successfully driven a wedge between us using money, or his perception of my lack of it, as the lever. When Jake turned 20, Claire ramped up her campaign. She started hinting that when Jake turned 21, he should demand an accounting of his trust, that he should find out exactly how much was left of his grandmother's money after I'd been managing it for so long. "Your father has had control of your inheritance for 17 years, she told Jake. "I know, because Jake mentioned it to me." "Don't you want to know what's happened to it? Don't you want to make sure it's all still there?" She was setting the stage, building suspicion, making sure that when the truth came out, Jake would be primed to doubt me, to assume I'd done something wrong. But she made one critical miscalculation. She assumed I'd been mismanaging the money, or skimming from it, or at minimum making poor investment choices that had diminished the trust. She assumed that after 20 years, there would be less money than there should be, and she could use that to turn Jake against me completely. She was very, very wrong. Jake's 21st birthday was on January 8th. The letter from the law firm arrived on March 15th. Exactly as the trust term specified, 90 days after the beneficiary reached age 21, the trustee was required to initiate contact and schedule the formal reading of trust documents. I called Jake that evening. He was in his apartment near campus, finishing up his senior year. "Hey, Dad, what's up?" "Jake, I need to talk to you about something important. Can you come to my house this weekend? Saturday afternoon? Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. But there's something I need to tell you. Something I've been waiting to tell you for a very long time." That sounds ominous. It's not ominous. It's actually good news. But it's complicated, and I need to explain it in person. Can you come? "Sure. Should I bring Mom and Marcus?" This was the moment I'd been planning for years. "Actually, I'd like it to be just you and me. What I need to discuss is private, between us. Dad, you're kind of freaking me out." "I know, I'm sorry. But I promise, it's good news. Just trust me and come on Saturday." 1 o'clock? "Okay, I'll be there." After I hung up, I called Claire. This was going to be delicious. "David, what do you want?" Her voice was cold, perfunctory. We only spoke when absolutely necessary about Jake. "I wanted to let you know that I'm meeting with Jake this Saturday. I'll be discussing his grandmother's trust with him." A pause. "It's about time. Jake's been asking questions. I assume you'll be explaining why there's so little left after your mismanagement." "Actually, I'll be explaining the full terms of the trust, all of them, including the ones you've never seen." "What are you talking about?" The complete trust documents, the unredacted version, the ones that explain exactly why you were never named co-trustee and why Jake wasn't told about the trust until now. Another pause, longer this time. What do you mean, why he wasn't told until now? The trust had explicit terms, Claire. Terms you never saw because you only received redacted documents. Terms that specified Jake couldn't be informed of the trust details until he turned 21. That's ridiculous. Why would Catherine? You'll have to ask Jake after Saturday. I'm sure he'll share the details with you. Or maybe he won't. That'll be his choice. David, what are you doing? What I've been legally required to do for 20 years. Tell my son the truth. All of it. I hung up before she could respond. Saturday arrived cold and rainy, typical March weather in Portland. I'd prepared everything meticulously. The complete trust documents, copies of every investment statement from the past 21 years, my mother's letter explaining her decisions, and my own letter written years ago, explaining everything I'd done and why. Jake arrived at 1 o'clock exactly. He looked nervous. Okay, Dad, I'm here. What's this big, mysterious thing you need to tell me? Sit down, I said, gesturing to the couch. This is going to take a while. I handed him the first document, the letter from the law firm. He read it, confusion spreading across his face. I don't understand. What trust? What beneficiary? Your grandmother's trust, the one she established before she died 21 years ago. You're the beneficiary, Jake. You always have been. But you said she left me money. You've been managing it, I know that. Yes. But what you don't know is how much or the terms under which it was set up, or why those terms existed. I handed him the complete trust documents. These explain everything. Jake started reading. I watched his face as he processed the information. Confusion, surprise, shock. This says, Dad, this says the trust was worth $2.7 million in 2003? Yes. And I'm just now finding out about it? Those were the terms your grandmother set. You couldn't be told until you were 21. He kept reading, found the current valuation. $5 million? His voice cracked. I'm inheriting $5 million. You're not inheriting it. You already own it. You've owned it since the day your grandmother died. I've just been managing it for you until you were old enough. Jake stared at the documents, then at me. $5 million, this whole time. And Mom knew about this? Your mother knew there was a trust. She received redacted documents that showed its existence. But she never saw the complete terms, the age restrictions, the reasons your grandmother set it up the way she did. What reasons? I handed him Catherine's letter. Your grandmother wrote this before she died. She wanted you to have it when the time came. Jake read his grandmother's letter. I'd memorized it years ago, every word. My dear Jake, if you're reading this, you're 21 years old and your father is finally able to tell you about the trust I've established for you. I wish I could be there to see the young man you've become, but cancer had other plans. I'm leaving you this money because I love you and because I want to give you opportunities I never had. But I'm also setting specific terms because I want to protect you. Your mother is a complicated woman. She's ambitious, driven, focused on financial success. These aren't inherently bad qualities, but they can be dangerous when combined with access to someone else's money. I don't trust Claire to put your interests above her own. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but it's the truth. If she'd known you had access to millions at 18, she would have found ways to influence your decisions, to benefit herself, to use your money for her purposes, while convincing you it was for your good. So I've kept this secret until now. Your father has been the sole trustee, managing this money, growing it, protecting it for you. He's done this knowing that you might resent him, might think he was being secretive or controlling. He's done it because I asked him to, and because he loves you. Now you're 21, old enough to make your own decisions. This money is yours completely. No strings, no restrictions. Use it wisely. Use it foolishly. That's your choice. But understand this. Your father has been protecting you all these years. Whatever your mother has told you about him, whatever narrative she's built, know that he's been safeguarding your future while she's been trying to control it. I love you, Jake. I'm proud of the man you'll become. Grandma Catherine. Jake finished reading. His hands were shaking. She's been telling me for years that you were hiding things, that you were using my money, that I should demand an accounting when I turned 21 to see how much you'd taken. I know, but you haven't taken anything. These statements, he flipped through the investment records. You've been growing it. It's doubled, almost tripled. I did what a trustee is supposed to do. Manage the assets responsibly, made conservative investments, protected your inheritance. All these years, when I felt guilty about you paying for college, when Mom said you were struggling, the college tuition came from the trust. Education expenses were explicitly allowed. I wasn't struggling, Jake. I was doing my job. His face crumpled. Dad, I'm so sorry. I believed her. I believed everything she said about you. She made it sound like you were being controlling, like you were keeping secrets for the wrong reasons. She didn't know the full truth. She knew there was a trust, knew I was managing it, but she didn't know your grandmother's terms or reasoning, so she filled in the blanks with her own assumptions. Assumptions that made you look bad and made her look like she was protecting me. Yes, Jake was quiet for a long time, reading through the documents again. Then he looked at me. Why didn't you tell me? I know Grandma said not to, but these past few years when Mom was poisoning me against you, why didn't you just tell me the truth? Because I gave my mother my word. Because the trust documents were legally binding. And because... I paused, choosing my words carefully. Because I wanted you to be old enough to really understand what she was trying to protect you from. And what's that? People who look at you and see dollar signs. People who want to influence you, control you, benefit from you. Your grandmother saw that in your mother. She wasn't wrong. Jake's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Mom. She's texting, asking how our meeting went. She wants to know what you told me. That's your decision. What you share with her, when you share it. It's your money, your information now. He looked at me. What would you do? I'd take some time to process. Maybe talk to a financial advisor, a lawyer, people who can help you understand what this means for your future. And then I'd have a very honest conversation with your mother about the last 15 years. She's going to lose her mind when she finds out. Probably. Good. There was steel in his voice. She deserves to. Jake didn't tell Claire immediately. He took my advice, spent 2 weeks meeting with the financial advisors I recommended, talking to my attorney Sarah Mitchell about trust law and estate planning, processing what it meant to suddenly be worth $5 million. During those 2 weeks, Claire called me 3 times, increasingly frantic. What did you tell him? The truth about the trust. He won't talk to me about it. He says he's processing. What does that mean? It means he's learning things that are changing his perspective. What things? David, what are you doing? What I've been doing for 21 years, protecting our son. Finally, on a Saturday in early April, Jake went to Claire's house. He'd asked me to be there for support. I parked down the street and waited. He was in there for 2 hours. When he came out, he was crying. He got in my car and just sat there for a few minutes, not speaking. You okay? I asked. She admitted it, all of it. She said when Grandma died and she found out about the trust, she'd planned to get herself named co-trustee so she could help manage it. When that didn't work, she decided to make sure I saw you as incompetent with money, as someone who couldn't be trusted, so that when I finally got the inheritance, I'd let her help me manage it. She told you this? She said it was for my own good, that you weren't sophisticated with investments, her word, sophisticated, and that she and Marcus could help me grow the money properly. She acted like she was doing me a favor, like her entire campaign to turn me against you was actually protective. What did you say? I told her I was worth $5 million because of Dad's management, not in spite of it. I told her that Grandma was right not to trust her. And I told her, his voice broke, I told her I needed space. Time to figure out who she really is versus who I thought she was. I'm sorry, Jake. I know this is painful. Is it true what she said, that Grandma never liked her? I thought about how to answer that. Your grandmother was cautious about your mother. She saw Claire's ambition, her focus on money, and she worried. She wanted to protect you from being manipulated. Was she right? You're in a better position to answer that than I am. Jake wiped his eyes. I feel like my whole childhood was a lie. Like everything Mom said, every story she told about you was just manipulation to set up this moment when I got the money and she could control it through me. Not your whole childhood. Your mother loves you, Jake. I believe that. But she also has blind spots about money, about control. Those two things got tangled up. How are you not angrier? She spent 15 years poisoning me against you. I looked at my son, this young man I'd watched grow up from a distance, watching Claire's influence, unable to counter it, waiting for this moment. I was angry for years, but anger doesn't help anyone. What helped was knowing that someday you'd be old enough to learn the truth, that someday I'd be able to give you all of this information and let you make your own judgments. That day is today. So no, I'm not angry anymore. I'm relieved. Grandma was smart, Jake said, making me wait until 21. If I'd known about this money at 18 with Mom in my ear. He shook his head. I probably would have let her control everything. I wasn't mature enough to see what she was doing. Your grandmother was very smart. She knew exactly what she was doing. Jake was quiet for a moment, then, thank you, Dad, for keeping her secret, for managing the money, for protecting me even when I thought you were the problem. Thank you. I reached over and squeezed his shoulder. You're my son. Protecting you is what I do. The next few months were turbulent. Jake's relationship with Claire was strained. He spent time with her, but there was a distance now, a wariness that hadn't been there before. He started asking questions about his childhood, revisiting memories with new perspective, seeing Claire's manipulation where he'd once seen maternal concern. Marcus, interestingly, was mostly out of the picture. Turns out he hadn't known the full extent of Claire's campaign against me. When Jake told him the truth about the trust and Claire's attempts to control it, Marcus was quietly horrified. Their marriage had been strained already. Apparently, Claire's spending and need for control extended to their relationship, too. They separated that summer. Jake and I rebuilt our relationship slowly, carefully. We had years of distance to overcome, years of Claire's narrative to unpack. But we were making progress. One evening in June, Jake came over for dinner. We were sitting on my back deck, watching the sunset, when he said, I've been thinking about the money, about what to do with it. It's your money, Jake. You can do whatever you want. I know, but I want to do something meaningful. Grandma left me this inheritance to give me opportunities. I want to honor that. Use some of it for opportunities for other people, too. What are you thinking? I want to set up a scholarship fund, the Catherine Webb Scholarship, for students studying law who come from low-income backgrounds. Grandma would have liked that, right?" I felt tears prickling my eyes. "She would have loved that." "I'm thinking $1 million to endow it. That would generate enough annual scholarships to help, 4 or 5 students a year? At least. And I want to invest another $1 million. Not touch it for 10 years, let it grow. Build long-term security the way you and Grandma did. The rest," he shrugged. "I'll use some for a down payment on a house eventually. Keep some liquid for opportunities, maybe travel. But responsibly. Not like," he trailed off. "Not like your mother would have encouraged." "Yeah." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Jake said, "Can I ask you something? Why did you marry her? Mom, I mean. Grandma clearly saw through her. Did you see the same things and ignore them? Or did Mom change?" I thought about that question carefully. "I think both. When I met your mother, she was ambitious and driven, but so was I. We both wanted success, stability, a good life. Those aren't bad things. But over time, especially after you were born, her focus shifted from building success to displaying it. It became less about security and more about status. Maybe that was always there, and I didn't see it. Maybe it developed. I honestly don't know." "Do you regret marrying her?" "No, because marrying her gave me you. And everything I've been through, the divorce, the custody battle, the years of watching her poison you against me, all of that was worth it to have you as my son." Jake's eyes were wet. "That's a really good answer, Dad." "It's the truth." A year has passed since Jake learned about his inheritance. He's graduated from college, started a job at an environmental nonprofit. Turns out he's passionate about conservation, which would have made his grandmother proud. He's moved into a modest apartment, living well below his means, investing carefully. The Catherine Webb Scholarship is up and running. They've awarded their first round of scholarships. 5 students, all studying law, all from backgrounds that would have made legal education financially impossible without help. Jake's relationship with Claire is cordial but distant. They have lunch once a month. She's working now. Marcus's divorce settlement was less generous than she'd hoped, and seems to be reassessing her priorities. Whether that's genuine growth or just necessity, I don't know. My relationship with Jake is better than it's been since he was 6 years old. We have dinner every week. He asks for advice sometimes, about money, about career, about life. I give it when I can, and I'm honest when I don't know. Last month, Jake came over with a woman named Sarah. No relation to my attorney, different Sarah. They'd been dating for 4 months, he told me, and it was getting serious. "Dad, I need to tell you something," Jake said after dinner. "I haven't told Sarah about the inheritance." "Why not?" "Because I want to know she loves me for me, not for the money. Does that make sense?" I looked at my son, this 22-year-old who'd learned at 21 exactly how money can poison relationships, and I felt proud. "It makes perfect sense. Your grandmother would approve. When should I tell her?" "When you're sure of her. When you're sure she's someone who sees you, not your bank account. You'll know." He nodded. "Grandma knew, didn't she? About Mom. She saw it early." "Yes, she did. I wish I'd known her better. I wish I could thank her for protecting me." "You are thanking her every day by using her gift wisely, by being thoughtful about money instead of obsessed with it, by understanding that wealth is a tool, not an identity. She'd be very proud of you." I'm 58 years old now. I live in the same modest house in Beaverton I've lived in for 25 years. I still work as a civil engineer, not because I need to, but because I like the work. I still drive a 10-year-old Honda Civic. I still shop at the same grocery store, eat at the same restaurants, live the same life I've always lived. Claire thinks that means I'm poor, that I wasted opportunities. She still doesn't understand that I chose this life, that I like this life, that I don't need status symbols to feel successful. Jake understands now. He's building a life that looks more like mine than like his mother's. Not because he doesn't have money, but because he's learned that having money and needing to show it are very different things. People ask me sometimes if I regret how things played out. If I wish I'd told Jake the truth sooner, confronted Claire earlier, handled things differently. My answer is always the same. No. My mother designed that trust with wisdom that only became clear over time. If Jake had known about the money at 18, still under Claire's influence, still young enough to be easily manipulated, she would have gotten exactly what she wanted. She would have convinced him to let her help manage it, would have directed his decisions, would have benefited from his inheritance while making him think it was his idea. But by making him wait until 21, by making me wait to tell him, my mother gave Jake something more valuable than money. She gave him the truth at exactly the moment he was mature enough to handle it. The timing was perfect. Jake had just finished most of college. He'd developed his own identity, his own values, separate from both Claire and me. He was old enough to see manipulation for what it was, old enough to understand financial matters, old enough to make informed decisions. And the timing meant that Claire's 15-year campaign to turn Jake against me had reached its crescendo right before the revelation. She'd committed fully to her narrative. David is hiding things. David is mismanaging money. David can't be trusted. She'd burned her bridges with confidence, certain that when Jake finally learned about the trust, he'd see evidence that she was right. Instead, he saw evidence that she'd been lying all along. Last week, on what would have been my mother's 86th birthday, Jake and I drove up to Seattle. We visited her grave, brought flowers, peonies, her favorite, and stood there in the autumn rain. I wish I remembered her better, Jake said. I was so young when she died. She loved you very much. Everything she did for you. The trust, you mean. Not just the trust. The way she set it up, the timing, the conditions. She spent her last months engineering your protection. That's love, Jake. He was quiet for a moment. Mom called me yesterday. Yeah? She wanted to know if I was planning to sue you. I felt a chill. Sue me? For what? She said now that I know the full value of the trust, I might want to audit your management. Make sure you hadn't taken any fees or made any questionable investments. She said most trustees take fees, and if you had, I'd be entitled to recover them. Did you tell her that the trust documents explicitly prohibit trustee fees? That I've never taken a penny from your inheritance? I did. She said I should verify that independently, that I shouldn't just trust your word. I looked at my son. And are you going to verify independently? I already did, 2 months ago, right after I learned about the trust. Had an independent auditor review every transaction over 21 years. This was news to me. You did? Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to make sure. Not because I doubted you, Dad. Because I needed to know for certain that when I defended you to Mom, when I told her you'd been honorable and responsible, I wasn't just believing it. I was knowing it. And what did the auditor find? Jake smiled. That you'd managed the trust better than most professional fund managers. That the $4.2 million in growth was actually exceptional, given the conservative investment strategy. That you'd never taken a fee, never made a questionable transaction, never done anything except exactly what Grandma asked you to do. I felt something loosen in my chest, a tension I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. You could have told me you were doing that. I know. I'm sorry. But I needed to do it on my own. make my own judgment. You understand that, right? I do. Mom was furious when I told her the audit results. She said the auditor must have been incompetent or that you'd somehow covered your tracks. She couldn't accept that you'd just done the right thing for 21 years. Your mother has a hard time believing people act without self-interest. Yeah, Jake looked at his grandmother's headstone. Grandma knew that about her. That's why she set up the trust the way she did. Not to be cruel, but to be realistic. We stood there in silence for a while, rain dripping off the trees around us. Dad, Jake said finally, I need to tell you something. Sarah, my girlfriend, I told her about the money. How did that go? She asked me why I'd waited 4 months to tell her. I said I needed to be sure of her first. She said that made sense, but it also meant I didn't fully trust her yet, and she was right. We had a long talk about trust, about honesty, about building a relationship on truth instead of tests. Sounds like a good conversation. It was. She's special, Dad. She's got her own career. She's a teacher, makes $45,000 a year and loves it. When I told her about the inheritance, she didn't see it as our money or start planning what we could do with it. She saw it as my money, my responsibility, my decision. She said the only thing that would change is she'd stop feeling guilty about me paying for dinners. I laughed. I like her already. I'm going to marry her. Not now. We've only been together a year. But eventually. I wanted you to know that. I wanted you to meet her properly as someone who's going to be family. I'd like that. And Dad, when I do marry her, I'm doing a prenup, a really solid one. Sarah agrees. She says if we're starting a marriage, we should start it with everything clear and protected. She says she's marrying me, not my bank account. I felt proud and sad at the same time. Proud that Jake had learned this lesson. Sad that he'd had to. Your grandmother would approve, I said. She'd say you found someone who sees you. I think I did. Jake paused. Do you think you'll ever date again? Maybe find someone who sees you. I'd thought about that over the years. I'd had a few relationships since the divorce. Nothing serious. Part of me had been too focused on waiting for this moment, waiting for Jake to turn 21, to learn the truth, to understand. Now that moment had passed. Maybe, I said. I'm not opposed to it. I'm just careful. Because of Mom. Because I understand now what my mother understood. That some people look at you and see an asset to be managed. I'd rather be alone than be someone's retirement plan. You're not poor, though, Dad. Grandma left you $400,000. Plus, you've been working this whole time. You've got to have decent savings. I'm comfortable, but I don't live like I am, and that's deliberate. It filters out people who are looking for a certain lifestyle. Jake smiled. Grandma trained you well. She tried to train your mother, too. It just didn't take. We left the cemetery as the rain picked up. Drove back to Portland talking about everything and nothing. Sarah, his job, my work, plans for Thanksgiving. Normal father-son conversation, the kind I'd missed for so many years. When I dropped Jake off at his apartment, he hugged me tight. Thank you, Dad, for everything. For keeping Grandma's secret even when it cost you. For managing the trust perfectly. For being exactly who you are. You're my son. That's what fathers do. Not all fathers. Mom made sure I knew that. She spent years telling me you were deficient somehow. But you're not. You're exactly the father I needed, even when I didn't know it. After he went inside, I sat in my car for a few minutes, letting that sink in. All those years of Claire's poison, all those years of distance and suspicion, and in the end, the truth had won. My mother had been right. She'd designed the trust not just to protect Jake's money, but to protect him from manipulation. And by forcing everyone to wait until he was 21, She'd ensured he'd be mature enough to see clearly, to evaluate fairly, to understand the difference between protection and control. I drive home through Portland rain, past the fancy neighborhoods where Claire and Marcus used to live, through the modest middle-class areas where people work hard and save carefully and don't feel the need to display their worth. My house is small, old, nothing impressive, but it's paid off, maintained, home. I park in the driveway, notice the gutters need cleaning before winter, add it to my mental to-do list. Inside, everything is quiet. No one to greet me, no family waiting. Just me, my books, my life. Some people would find that lonely. I find it peaceful. My phone buzzes. A text from Jake. Sarah says dinner next Sunday at our place, 6 p.m. Don't bring anything. Just bring stories about Grandma. Sarah wants to know more about her. I smile and text back. I'll be there. Another text arrives, this one from Claire. Jake told me about his engagement plans. I assume you're happy you'll be more involved in his life than I will be. Congratulations on winning. I stare at that text for a long time. There's so much I could say. That this was never about winning. That she created the distance between herself and Jake through her own choices. That if she'd just been honest, been trustworthy, none of this would have happened. But what's the point? Claire still doesn't understand. Maybe she never will. I delete the text without responding. Instead, I go to my office, pull out the file I've kept for 21 years. All the trust documents, all the investment records, all the correspondence. I've kept duplicates of everything, organized meticulously, just in case. Now I don't need them anymore. Jake has the originals. The trust has been fully distributed. My job is done. I sit at my desk and write a letter. Not to Jake. He doesn't need another letter. To Sarah, his girlfriend, soon-to-be fiancée, eventually his wife. Dear Sarah, we haven't met properly yet, but Jake tells me you're someone special. Someone who sees him for who he is, not what he has. In my experience, that's the rarest and most valuable quality a person can have. Jake is going to tell you his grandmother's story, about the trust she set up, about why she set it up the way she did. When he does, I want you to understand something. Catherine Webb wasn't a suspicious or cynical woman. She was a realist. She'd spent 40 years as an attorney watching what money did to families, how it twisted relationships, how it brought out the worst in people. She didn't want that for her grandson. So she designed a system of protection. Not just financial protection, but emotional protection. She gave Jake time to become himself before he became wealthy. She gave him the truth at the exact moment he was mature enough to handle it. And she gave all of us, a lesson about trust. Real trust isn't blind. Real trust is informed. It's looking at someone's actions over years, not just their words in the moment. It's understanding that what people do when they think no one's watching tells you who they really are. Jake waited 4 months to tell you about his inheritance because he needed to see who you were when you thought he was just a regular guy working a nonprofit job. That wasn't a lack of trust. That was the beginning of real trust. Trust built on evidence, on observation, on truth. You passed his test by not knowing it was a test, by being yourself, by loving him for him. Now you know about the money. My advice? Forget about it. Live your life the way you would have lived it if he'd had nothing. Build your careers, make your own way. Use the inheritance as security but not as identity. That's what Catherine wanted for Jake. That's what I've tried to teach him. And from what Jake tells me, that's already how you see the world. Welcome to the family, Sarah. You're exactly what Jake needs. You're exactly what this family needs. Take care of my son. He's been through a lot. He's learned hard lessons about trust and betrayal and family. He needs someone steady, someone honest, someone real. Thank you for being that person. David Webb. I seal the letter, address it to Jake's apartment. He can give it to Sarah when the time is right. It's been 21 years, 3 months, and 17 days since my mother died. Since she set up the trust that protected my son, exposed my ex-wife, and taught all of us lessons we needed to learn. Was it worth it? The years of distance from Jake? The years of being painted as the villain? The years of watching Claire manipulate my son while I couldn't defend myself? Yes. Because Jake emerged from those 21 years as exactly the man my mother hoped he'd become. Thoughtful, careful, wise beyond his years, rich in assets but not defined by them, protected from manipulation because he'd experienced it and learned to recognize it. Claire spent 15 years trying to turn Jake against me so she could control his inheritance. Instead, she turned him into someone who couldn't be controlled. My mother understood something Claire never did. You can't protect someone by controlling them. You protect them by teaching them to think for themselves, to question, to evaluate, to trust slowly and carefully. That's what the trust did. Not just protect Jake's money, but teach him how to protect himself. I'm 58 years old. My ex-wife tried to steal my son's inheritance and turn him against me. She failed at both. My mother gave my son nearly $5 million and a lesson about trust that's worth even more than the money. And I gave my son 21 years of patient, quiet protection while he learned to see clearly. Was it hard? Yes. Was it lonely? Sometimes. Was it worth it? Absolutely. Because last Sunday, I had dinner with my son and his girlfriend, and they laughed at my stories about Catherine Webb. They asked questions about trust law and estate planning. They talked about their future, careful, thoughtful plans that honored both ambition and security. And when I left that night, Jake walked me to my car and said, "I'm glad Grandma chose you to be the trustee. I'm glad she trusted you to protect me. She chose right." That's all any father wants to hear, that he did right by his child, that he protected them when they needed protecting, that he loved them enough to endure their misunderstanding until they were ready for truth. My mother designed a trust that worked perfectly. She gave Jake money, yes, but more importantly, she gave him time. Time to mature, time to see clearly, time to understand. And she gave me a gift, too, though I didn't recognize it at first. She gave me the certainty that someday the truth would come out, that someday Jake would know I'd been protecting him all along, that someday he'd understand. That day came on March 15th, a cold Tuesday morning, with a letter from a law firm. If you're reading this and you're dealing with something similar, if you're protecting someone who doesn't know they're being protected, if you're keeping secrets that need to be kept, if you're enduring misunderstanding for the sake of someone's future, hear this. The truth has a timeline. Sometimes that timeline is longer than you'd like. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it costs you relationships, reputation, peace of mind. But if you're doing it for the right reasons, if you're protecting someone who needs protection, if you're honoring someone's wishes who had the wisdom to see what others couldn't see, then wait. Build your case. Document everything. Do your job with integrity. And trust that when the time is right, when the person is ready, the truth will make everything clear. My mother knew that. She built a trust that worked on every level, financially, legally, and emotionally. She protected her grandson not just from losing money, but from being manipulated by someone who would have used his love against him. And she trusted me to see it through, even when it was hard, even when my son looked at me with suspicion because of his mother's lies. I kept that trust. I did my job. I waited. And now my son knows the truth. All of it. The money his grandmother left him, the protection she built around it, the years I spent honoring her wishes while his mother tried to undermine me. He knows, and that knowledge has changed everything. Claire thought money was power. She thought if she could control Jake's money, she could control him. She was wrong. The real power wasn't in the money. It was in the truth, and the timing of that truth. 21 years, 3 months, and 17 days. It was exactly the right time. My mother was a brilliant woman. She knew that gifts given too early can become curses. She knew that trust is earned through time and testing. She knew that protection sometimes means withholding information until someone is ready to handle it. She was right about all of it. And now Jake understands what she did for him, what I did for him, what real love looks like. Not control disguised as care, but patience and protection and trust in someone's future judgment. That's the inheritance that matters most. Not the $5 million, though that's significant, but the lesson about who to trust and why, about what real protection looks like, about how love sometimes requires patience and silence and faith that someday the truth will speak for itself. Jake got both inheritances, the money and the wisdom, and he's using both exactly as his grandmother hoped he would. Carefully, thoughtfully, generously, with eyes wide open to manipulation and a heart protected by understanding. That's Catherine Webb's legacy. That's my son's inheritance. That's the truth I gave him at 21, and it was worth every single day of the wait.